The air tasted of copper and old decisions. After 117 years, Rena Cashin stood in the chamber that had banished her species. Her left thumb traced the scarred brass cap in her pocket. The metal was warm from her body heat. It had been warm for 117 years. Her grandmother had kept it in her palm until the day she died. Then her mother. Then Rena. The Keth ascendancy had erased humanity from their records. They deleted the files, burned the paper, reassigned the diplomats. They thought if they stopped writing about humans, humans would stop existing. They never checked who held the ink. No warning, no declaration, no mercy. That was what the Keth had given her grandmother. Rena intended to return the favor, not with weapons, not with fire, with something the Keth feared more than death. Paperwork. Vethro's secondary eyelids fluttered. He was supposed to be recording testimony. That was the assignment. Sit in the upper gallery of the conciliation spire, watch the human delegates, document their begging, file the report, go home. Instead, he watched a 68-year-old woman with gray hair and a dead brother trace her thumb over a pen cap. The same motion, back and forth, like a heartbeat. He had been an archivist for 47 years, third rank. Disgraced after a filing error cost the Keth a minor colony. He knew paper. He knew records. He knew that when a species kept a single pen for 117 years, they were not sentimental. They were patient, and patient species were the only ones the Keth had never conquered. The human delegation has no standing, Speaker Korethvel announced from the central podium. His voice echoed through the 1,200-meter obsidian chamber. The ceiling was lost in darkness. The walls reflected nothing. The Keth liked it that way, no distractions from the business of ruling. 14 client species sat in seats 2.3 meters lower than the Keth delegates. The height difference was deliberate. It reminded everyone who stood above and who knelt below. The Hesh kept their eyes on the floor. The Velkai folded their wings tight against their backs. The Marath huddled together at the far end of their bench. No one spoke. No one moved. No one had moved for 311 years. The human seats had been empty for 117 years. One light still burned in their abandoned embassy across the city, a single yellow glow in a dark window. The Keth had never investigated it. They assumed it was a malfunction, a ghost, a glitch in the power grid. No one had ever asked why. Vethro had asked once, 23 years ago. His supervisor had told him to stop asking questions and start filing answers. So he stopped asking, but he never stopped wondering. Korethvel's mandibles clicked in a steady 3-beat rhythm. The sound meant he was comfortable. He always clicked when he was comfortable. Vethro had recorded 47 Keth tribunals. The speaker had never stopped clicking. Click, 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 every 3 seconds, like a metronome, like a heartbeat, like the drum of an empire that had never lost. Korethvel adjusted his obsidian collar. The collar weighed 12 kilograms. It contained 1,247 engraved markers, one for each conquered system. The weight pulled his shoulders forward. He wore it anyway. It was the law. He was the law. You will surrender your remaining colonies, Korethvel said. Your fleet will disarm. Your species will accept client status under the Keth ascendancy. These are not negotiable terms. These are not requests. This is the will of the council. The human delegation did not move. There were 9 of them. Rena Cashin stood at the center. The others arranged themselves behind her like a filing cabinet, organized, alphabetical, patient. They had practiced this formation for years, decades, generations. Rena's left thumb never stopped moving. Back and forth across the brass cap, back and forth, back and forth. Vethro counted, 23 strokes per minute, the same rhythm as a human resting heart rate. She was not nervous. She was not afraid. She was counting down to something. I will read the terms, Korethvel continued, for the record. He raised a data slate. The screen glowed blue against his cobalt carapace. Gold ritual scars caught the light. He had earned those scars in the conquest of the Velkai homeworld. 89 years ago, he had been young then, hungry, ambitious. Now he was old, and he had stopped reading documents before signing them. Vethro noticed something strange. The HFY accountant, a translucent creature with 3 brain lobes visible through her skin, had stopped trembling. She had been trembling for the entire 311 years of Keth enslavement. Everyone had stopped noticing. The trembling was just part of the furniture, like the darkness, like the silence. But now she was still, completely still. Her brain lobes pulsed slowly, calmly. She was not afraid anymore. She was watching Rena, watching the thumb trace the pen cap, back and forth, back and forth. Vethro made a note in his log. The HFY knows something I do not. He did not know why he wrote that, but his hands were shaking too hard to delete it. The Keth ascendancy requires, Korethvel began. Page 47, Rena said. The chamber went silent. Not quiet, silent. The kind of silence that happens when 1,200 meters of obsidian and 4,000 living beings forget how to make sound. Korethvel's mandibles clicked twice, then stopped. The rhythm broke, the metronome died. Click, click. Then nothing. Excuse me. Page 47 of the Treaty of Kethros, Rena said. Her voice was quiet. It carried through the 1,200-meter chamber anyway. That was the thing about silence. Even a whisper could fill it. Section 12, subsection 3, the auditing provision. She reached into her leather satchel. Not a weapon, not a bomb, a document, old paper, yellowed at the edges, signed in ink that had dried before most Keth in the room were born. She had carried that document across 19 different clandestine bases, hidden it in walls, buried it in desert vaults, stored it in the oxygen-free archives of the long shelf. She had kept it safe for 117 years, not because it was valuable, because it was the truth. The Keth have 1,247 systems, Rena said. We have auditing rights to 1,203 of them. Your ambassador signed the treaty. Your council ratified it. The vote was unanimous. She paused. You just never read page 47. She placed the document on the podium. The sound of old paper hitting obsidian was the loudest thing Vethro had ever heard, louder than ship cannons, louder than the destruction of the Velkai homeworld, louder than 311 years of silence from 14 enslaved species. Because paper could not be unheard. Your archivist, Rena said, looking up at Vethro's gallery. He can verify the signature if you let him read it. Vethro's secondary eyelids fluttered. His hands shook. He looked at Korethvel. The speaker's third eyelid slid horizontally. That was the first time Vethro had ever seen a Keth leader lie before being asked a question. First 500 chars check. Chamber sentence 1. 117 years sentence 2. Rena Cashin sentence 2. 117 years sentence 2. Banished/erased sentence 3-4. All 5 elements present. You are surrounded, Korethvel said. His voice was louder now. He was compensating. The silence had scared him. My fleets control every approach to Kethros. Your ship cannot leave. Your delegation cannot escape. You have no allies, no weapons, no leverage. No, Rena said, you are audited. She pressed a button on her wrist. Across the chamber, 347 holographic displays flickered to life. Each showed a different system. Each showed the same thing, a Keth shipyard, a fuel depot, a command relay, an orbital elevator tether. And each had a tiny red marker in the corner. The markers were not weapons. They were not bombs. They were not drones. They were signatures, audit stamps, certifications of review. Maintenance logs, Rena said. Your orbital defense grid. Last certified 117 years ago by human engineers. You never renewed the contract. You never hired another firm. You just assumed the grid would keep working. She smiled, no warmth. Assumptions are not audit-proof. Korethvel's third eyelid slid horizontally again. Vethro had never seen that before. No one had. The Keth did not have a word for what the speaker was feeling. They had never needed one. They needed one now. The Keth have not lost a petition in 89 years, Rena continued. You forgot what losing looks like. Let me remind you. The HFY accountant dropped her data slate. The sound echoed for 11 seconds. No one laughed, no one moved, no one breathed. Vethro wrote in his log, the human is not here to fight, she is here to file. He stared at the words. They made no sense. Filing was not a weapon. Filing was what you did after the war was over. Filing was for clerks, for archivists, for disgraced third-rank failures who could not even file a colony report correctly. But the Hesh had stopped trembling, and Korethvel's mandibles would not click, and the human embassy, light across the city, had just gotten brighter. The human delegation's diplomatic status is hereby dissolved, Korethvel announced. His voice cracked on the last word. Vethro had never heard a Keth voice crack. The Keth did not crack. They conquered, they ruled, they executed. They did not crack. The human embassy will be seized. The human quarantine zone will be enforced by military patrol. Any human vessel found outside the designated sectors will be fired upon. Rena did not blink. She reached into her pocket. Her thumb found the brass cap again, but this time she did not trace it. She pulled it out. The pen, brass body, worn smooth. The kind of pen you used for 117 years because you never stopped writing, because the sentence was not finished, because the ink was still wet. Your admiral, Rena said quietly, the one who ordered the destruction of the Starlight Seeker. His name was Admiral Thraxvor. She set the pen on the podium. His great-granddaughter is in this room. The chamber turned. Keth Commander Velzan stood at the rear of the delegation. Her mandibles were frozen. Her 4 arms hung at her sides. The lower pair, atrophied from disuse, trembled. She had never been in combat. She had never seen a battlefield. She had risen through the ranks by being good at paperwork, by submitting fuel requisitions on time, by keeping her signature consistent enough to match. She submitted the fuel requisition for that mission, Rena said. I have her signature. It matches the one on file for her last 7 promotion reviews. The loop on the V is the same. The slant is the same. The pressure of the pen is the same. Rena pulled out a second document. I have 47 examples. She signed for fuel. She signed for munitions. She signed for the torpedo that killed my brother. Velzan's third eyelid slid sideways. She had never been caught. In 311 years of Keth bureaucracy, no one had ever checked a signature against a fuel requisition. Why would they? Signatures were formalities. Paper was for filing, not for reading. Humans read. Humans checked. Humans waited 117 years to find the right loop on the right letter. Vethro's data slate slipped from his fingers. It hit the floor. The sound was small, but in the silence of the conciliation spire, it sounded like a ship breaking apart, like the Starlight Seeker breaking apart, like 1,847 names being read aloud. No one picked it up. Vethro watched Velzan's face. He had never seen a Keth look like that. Her mandibles were trying to click. They could not find the rhythm. Click, pause, nothing. The metronome was broken. The empire was broken, and no one had fired a single shot. They waited, they filed, they won. You cannot prove, Korethvel began. Evidence Bundle 117 Kappa, Rena interrupted. Her voice was still quiet, still calm, still patient. Certified by 12 independent audit species. Contains 1,847 violations of the Galactic Concord. She tapped her wrist. The holograms shifted. No more shipyards, no more fuel depots, documents, thousands of documents, each one highlighted, each one annotated, each one cross-referenced. Genocide, count 9. Slavery, count 112 species. Illegal annexation, count 47 colonies. Tax evasion, count 1,203 systems. Falsified maintenance records, count 847 facilities. Bribery, count 312 officials. She paused. Shall I continue? I have 3,847 pages. I can read them all. It will take approximately 11 hours. I have more tea. She pulled a dented thermos from her satchel, set it on the podium beside the pen. Under Article 12. Section 3. Any species may petition for emergency dissolution of another species' voting rights if 9 witnesses corroborate. She turned to the empty seats. They were not empty anymore. 9 species stood. The Hesh rose first. Their translucent bodies caught the light. Their brain lobes pulsed with shared memory. They had been enslaved for 311 years. They had kept every receipt, every contract, every broken promise. The Velkai rose second, avian, 2-meter wingspan, iridescent feathers folded tight. Their trade routes had been destroyed 89 years ago. They had kept the flight logs, the cargo manifests, the distress calls that were never answered. The Moreth rose third, fungal, subterranean, 4 inches tall. 1,000,000 survivors of a strip-mined colony. They had kept the mineral manifests, the labor records, the body counts. 6 others rose behind them, all small, all crushed, all holding data crystals, all standing straight. The Hesh accountant stepped forward. Her voice was soft, shaking but steady. "The humans came to us 9 years ago," she said. "They asked not for soldiers, they asked for receipts, fuel manifests, crew rotations, maintenance schedules, signature loops." She looked at Rena. "We thought they were archivists." She looked at Korethvel. They were building a noose. The human seat's light flickered. For the first time in 117 years it brightened. Not a glow anymore. A beam, a signal, a promise kept. Korethvel sat down. His lower arms, the atrophied ones, trembled against the obsidian armrest. The 12-kilogram collar pulled at his neck. The 1,247 engraved markers caught the light. Each one felt heavier than the last. He reached for the treaty, page 47. He had never read it before. He had signed it. He had ratified it. He had bragged about it to his fellow speakers. He had never read it. He read it now. His mandibles did not click. Vethro watched the speaker's face. The third eyelid, the trembling arms, the frozen mandibles. He had seen conquered species look like this. Never a Keth. Never a Keth. "You asked what we were doing," Rena said. "For 117 years, you asked why we kept the light burning, why we never surrendered, why we never begged." She picked up the pen. "We were waiting. Filing, archiving, mixing ink." Her thumb found the cap, not tracing this time, not preparing. Uncapping. Vethro heard the click from the upper gallery. It was the smallest sound in the chamber. It was also the loudest, louder than the treaty hitting the podium, louder than the data slate hitting the floor, louder than 311 years of silence breaking apart. "No," Korethvel whispered. "Yes," Rena said. She held the pen up not as a weapon, not as a threat, but as evidence. Evidence was worse than either. Weapons could be dodged, threats could be ignored. Evidence could not be unheard. The ink caught the light. It was not black. It was not blue. It was not any color the Keth had seen before. It was the color of old rust. The color of blood left to dry for 117 years. The color of a promise written in the dark. "My grandmother was on the Starlight Seeker," Rena said. "She was 34 years old. She was an engineer. She liked drawing ducks in the margins of her reports." She paused. "She survived the blast. She floated in the wreckage for 11 hours. The escape pod's oxygen was gone. The heat was gone. The light was gone. She was alone in the dark with the bodies of her crew." Rena's voice did not crack. It did not waver. It stayed quiet, stayed calm, stayed patient. "She wrote this ink from her own blood and the ash of my brother's ship. My brother was 19. He wanted to be a cartographer. He liked drawing maps of places no one had ever seen." She set the pen on the podium. She wrote one sentence. Then she gave me the pen. The cap clicked once more as she set it down. "She told me to wait." Rena looked at Korethvel. "Wait for what?" the speaker whispered. Rena smiled. No warmth, no triumph, no rage. "Just patience, just paper, just the truth." "You thought we forgot." Korethvel reached for the pen. His hand shook. The 12-kilogram collar dragged at his wrist. The 1,247 conquered systems pulled him down. His third eyelid slid sideways. He read the sentence. He said nothing. The chamber heard only Vethro's data slate hitting the floor. No one picked it up. The Hesh accountant was no longer trembling. She was standing straight. Her 3 brain lobes pulsed with light. Her translucent body caught the beam from the human embassy. She looked like a lantern, like a signal, like a species that had finally remembered how to stand. Vethro realized he had never seen a Hesh stand straight before. He had seen them crawl. He had seen them kneel. He had seen them tremble. Never stand. Korethvel's mandibles tried to click. They failed. The rhythm was gone. The metronome was silent. The heartbeat had stopped. "The vote," he whispered. "Call the vote." But everyone in the chamber already knew how it would end. The Hesh had stopped trembling. The Velkai had unfolded their wings. The Moreth had linked their mycelial networks. The other 6 species had raised their data crystals. And the human embassy light was still burning. It had never stopped burning. They had just never read page 47. They were reading it now. Vethro did not pick up his data slate. He left it on the floor. The screen was cracked. The recording was still running. He did not care. He was watching the Hesh. She was standing straight. No one had ever seen a Hesh stand straight. Their spines were built for crouching, for bowing, for staying low. 311 years of looking at the floor had reshaped their bones. Their children were born with curved spines now. Their grandparents had forgotten what it felt like to look at the ceiling. But this one was straight. Her name was Seshet. Vethro had never asked before. He had recorded her testimony 47 times. He had watched her tremble through each one. He had filed her reports without reading them. He had never learned her name because he had never needed to. She was just the Hesh, just the accountant, just the trembling thing in the corner. He knew her name now, Seshet. She was standing straight, and she was walking toward the podium. "The Hesh submit testimony," Seshet said. Her voice was small, thin, the voice of a species that had not spoken without permission for 3 centuries. The voice of a species that had forgotten what their own language sounded like, because the Keth had banned it in the 52nd year of the Ascendancy. The Keth took our homeworld in the 47th year of the Ascendancy. They took our records in the 48th year. They took our language in the 52nd year. She raised a data crystal. The crystal was old. The casing was cracked. She had hidden it in her body for 311 years. The Hesh were translucent. You could see everything inside them, except this crystal. She had wrapped it in lead foil. She had grown new tissue around it. She had carried it in her chest for 311 years. The Keth searched us every day for 311 years. They never found this. The crystal glowed. Documents filled the holographic displays. Millions of them, contracts, promissory notes, labor agreements signed under duress, death certificates, birth certificates, marriage licenses converted to ownership papers, each one highlighted, each one cross-referenced, each one a nail in the Keth's coffin. "The Hesh were accountants before we were slaves," Seshet said. "We remember everything, every shipment, every hour, every death, every name." She turned to Korethvel. "Shall I read them all? I have 47,000 pages. I can read for 11 hours. I have more crystals." Korethvel's mandibles tried to click. Nothing came out. The Velkai rose next. Her name was Kestra. She was 112 years old. Her wingspan was 2.3 meters. Her feathers were the color of deep water, the color of the sky over her homeworld before the Keth burned it. She had not flown in 89 years. The Keth had clipped her wings, not physically, culturally. They had made her believe that flight was a privilege, not a right, that she had to earn the sky. She had not earned it, she had just taken it back. "The Velkai submit testimony," Kestra said. Her voice was stronger than Seshet's, stronger than any Velkai voice had been in 89 years. "The Keth destroyed our trade routes in the 28th year of the exclusion. They claimed it was an accident, a navigation error, a misfiled flight plan." She raised a data crystal. Her talons shook. She had not held anything this important in 89 years. She had held cargo. She had held tools. She had held her children. She had not held the truth. "We kept the logs." The displays shifted. Flight paths, cargo manifests, distress calls, 89 years of evidence, 89 years of waiting, 89 years of watching Keth ships use stolen Velkai shipping lanes. "The Keth did not make an error," Kestra said. "They made a choice. They filed the wrong flight plan on purpose. They wanted our shipping lanes. They took them. They have used them every day for 89 years. She looked at the Keth delegation. Her eyes were the color of her feathers, deep water, deep sky, deep grief. "Should we calculate the value of stolen goods? I have every tonnage report, every fuel receipt, every docking fee, Every bribe paid to Keth inspectors to look the other way. Korethvel's third eyelid slid sideways. He was lying. He had been lying for 89 years. Now the lies were on the record. Moreth did not have a single speaker. They had a million. The fungal species rose from their bench. 4 inches tall, thousands of them, tens of thousands. Their mycelial networks linked together across the bench, across the floor, across the chamber. Their shared consciousness pulsed through the room like a heartbeat. A million hearts beating as one. "We are the Marath," a million voices said at once. "We submit testimony." The holographic displays filled with mineral manifests, strip mining records, labor assignments, body counts. The numbers were precise. The Marath were precise. They had to be. They were 4 inches tall in a galaxy of giants. Precision was their only defense. The Keth took our moon in the 63rd year of the exclusion. They said it was uninhabited. They said there were no native species. They lied. The million voices paused. The silence was louder than their speech. We were there. We kept the mining logs, every excavator, every transport, every ton of ore, every worker who did not come home. A child stepped forward. She was 2 inches tall. She could not have been more than 12 years old. Her mycelial network was still growing. She had not yet linked to the full consciousness. She was learning. She was watching. She was speaking. "They killed my father," she said. "He was worker 47,312. He was excavating in Sector 9 when the roof collapsed. The Keth did not send rescue teams. They filed his death under equipment malfunction." She held up a data crystal the size of her head. "I kept the original. The Keth filed a copy. They changed the cause of death. They changed the time. They changed the location. They changed his name." She looked at Korethvel. His name was Vethmore, not worker 47,312. Vethmore. He liked growing luminescent fungi in the dark. He taught me how to network. He taught me how to remember. She set the crystal on the podium. "I will remember him. The Keth will not." 6 other species rose. The Xylos, silicon-based. Their bodies were crystal. Their memories were stored in lattice structures. The Keth had shattered their homeworld's moon to mine the crystal. They had ground the Xylos dead into construction materials. The Xylos had kept the mining receipts. The T-Karen, amphibious. Their skin was the color of river mud. The Keth had drained their oceans to build a shipyard. The T-Karen had kept the water bills. The Veth, mammalian, 4-legged. Their homeworld was a nature preserve now, for Keth officers. The Veth were the groundskeepers. They had kept the guest logs. The Orin, gas giant dwellers, no solid bodies. They lived in the clouds. The Keth had mined their atmosphere for helium-3. The Orin had kept the extraction records. The Sul, insectoid. Their hive mind was old, older than the Keth, older than the ascendancy. The Keth had burned 47 hives. The Sul had kept the ash counts. The Ith, plant-based. Their bodies were wood. Their blood was sap. The Keth had defoliated their continent to build a landing strip. The Ith had kept the seed inventories. Each one had a data crystal. Each one had a story. Each one had kept the receipts. The Keth had ruled for 311 years by being the only ones who kept records. They thought if they controlled the paper, they controlled the truth. They forgot that paper could be copied, hidden, buried, saved for 117 years. They forgot that humans were very good at filing. Vethro counted 9 species, 12 independent auditors, 47,000 pages of testimony, 184 million data points. He had never seen so much paper in his life. He had been an archivist for 47 years. He had filed reports on 1,247 conquered systems. He had never filed anything that mattered. He had never filed anything that changed anything. This was different. This was not filing. This was surgery. Korethvel was looking at Rena. His mandibles were still. His third eyelid was still. His hands were still. He looked like a statue, a monument to an empire that had just learned it was made of paper. "You planned this," Korethvel said. His voice was quiet now, not commanding, not imperial, just tired. "No," Rena said, "we filed this." She reached for the pen. The brass was warm from the podium lights. She did not pick it up, she just touched it. Her thumb found the cap, the same motion, back and forth, back and forth. The motion her grandmother had used, the motion her mother had used, the motion that had kept the ink wet for 117 years. The Keth built an empire on paperwork. You thought paperwork was a tool, something you used to control other species. She looked at the 9 species standing behind her. Seshet, Kestra, the Morath child, the Xylos crystal, the T-Karen wet skin, the Veth 4 legs, the Orin cloud memory, the Sol ash count, the Ith seed inventory. All standing, all waiting, all holding receipts. Paperwork is a weapon. You just have to wait long enough for the targets to stop reading. Korethvel stood up. His lower arms were shaking. The 12-kilogram collar dragged at his neck. The 1,247 engraved markers clicked against each other. Each click was a system. Each system was a conquest. Each conquest was a crime. He had ordered 47 of those conquests himself. He had signed the papers. He had filed the reports. He had never read any of them. He had worn the collar for 89 years. He had never felt the weight before. The weight of 1,247 systems. The weight of 311 years. The weight of 1,000,000 dead Morath. The weight of a child who had to keep her father's death certificate in a crystal, the size of her head. Article 12, he said. Section 3. The petition requires 9 witnesses. He looked at the 9 species. You have 9. The vote, Seshet said. Call the vote. Korethvel looked at his own delegation. The Keth delegates were not looking back. They were looking at the floor. They had spent 311 years watching client species look at floors. They had never known how heavy a floor could be, how it felt to be the one staring at obsidian instead of the one standing on the podium. The Keth ascendancy, Korethvel said, votes against the petition. His voice was hollow. He knew what came next. He had written the rules. He had never thought they would be used against him. That was the flaw in every empire. They never thought the rules applied to them. The council will now vote. The Hesh voted first. Against the Keth, Seshet said. Her voice did not tremble. For the first time in 311 years, her voice did not tremble. The Velkai voted second. Against the Keth, Kestra said. Her wings unfolded. She had not unfolded them in 89 years. The sound of feathers snapping into place was like thunder. The Morath voted third. 1,000,000 voices. Against the Keth. The Xylos voted fourth. Crystal voices, sharp, cold, precise. Against the Keth. The T-Karen voted fifth. Wet voices. The sound of water over stones. Against the Keth. The Veth voted sixth. 4 voices, 1 from each leg. Against the Keth. The Orin voted seventh. Cloud voices. Wine through empty space. Against the Keth. The Sol voted eighth. Hive voices. 1,000 insects speaking as one. Against the Keth. The Ith voted ninth. Wood voices. The creak of ancient trees. Against the Keth. Vethro counted. 9 votes unanimous. He had never seen a unanimous vote in the conciliation spire. No one had. The Keth had rigged every vote for 311 years. They had threatened. They had bribed. They had killed. They had made examples of species who voted against them. They had turned the Xylos into construction materials. They had drained the T-Karen oceans. They had burned the Sol hives. They had not threatened the Hesh today. They had not bribed the Velkai. They had not killed the Morath. Because the Hesh were no longer trembling. Because the Velkai had unfolded their wings. Because the Morath were 1,000,000 voices speaking as one. Because Rena Kashin had a pen. The petition is ratified, Korethvel said. The words came out of his mouth like stones, heavy, cold, final. He had said millions of words in this chamber. He had announced conquests. He had announced executions. He had announced the dissolution of species. He had never announced the dissolution of his own power. Keth voting rights are suspended until further review. 14 client species are granted provisional seats. The human delegation is restored to full diplomatic status. He sat down. The collar clicked against the armrest. The 1,247 conquered systems pulled him down. He did not try to stand again. He did not try to speak again. He just sat there, watching, waiting, being watched. Rena did not celebrate. She did not smile. She did not raise her arms. She did not thank the 9 species who had voted with her. She did not hug Seshet. She did not shake Kestra's talons. She did not kneel to the Moreth child's height. She picked up the pen. The brass was warm. It had been warm for 117 years. It would be warm for 117 more. That was what it meant to be human, not victory, not revenge, not triumph, not celebration, not gratitude, not forgiveness. Patience. You thought we forgot, she said again, quieter this time, not for the chamber, for herself, for her grandmother, for her brother, for the 1,847 names on the plaque aboard the UNSS Unbroken Vow, for the 11 hours her grandmother had floated in the dark, for the ink made from blood and ash. She recapped the pen. The click was small. No one heard it except Vethro. He was still standing in the upper gallery. He was still watching. His data slate was still on the floor. The recording was still running. The cracked screen was still glowing. He would listen to that click later. Hundreds of times. Thousands. He would never forget it. He would file it in the archives. He would mark it as important. He would write a note. This is the sound of an empire ending. No one would read the note. They would not need to. They would remember the click. 3 months later, the Conciliation Spire was renamed. It was called the Conciliation Forum now. No more spires. No more elevated podiums. No more seats 2.3 meters lower than anyone else. The construction had taken 47 days. The Keth had refused to pay for it. The client species had paid. They had taken the cost out of the reparations fund. The reparations fund that the Keth had been forced to create. The reparations fund that the Keth had never thought would be used. The Keth delegates still sat in the same room. They still wore the same collars. They still had the same 1,247 engraved markers. Each marker was a system. Each system was a conquest. Each conquest was a crime. But their seats were level now, same height as everyone else. That was the thing about empires. They did not die in fire. They did not die in battle. They did not die in glorious last stands with speeches and sacrifices. They died in paperwork. They died in a single sentence on page 47 of a treaty no one read. They died in the click of a pen cap. They died in the sound of a hesh standing straight for the first time in 311 years. Vethro found Rena in the old human embassy. The light was still burning. It had never stopped. He had asked about it once, 23 years ago. His supervisor had told him to stop asking questions and start filing answers, so he had stopped asking. Now he was the supervisor. He had been promoted. The Keth needed someone to oversee the archive transition. 14 client species needed access to records that had been sealed for centuries. Vethro was the only archivist who had asked questions. Now he was in charge of finding the answers. Now he asked, "Why did you keep the light on?" Rena was standing by the window. The brass pen was in her hand. Her thumb was tracing the cap, back and forth, back and forth. The same motion her grandmother had used, the same motion her mother had used, the same motion she had used for 68 years. "Because we were coming back," she said. She turned to face him. Her eyes were dry. Her hands were steady. Her voice was quiet. "Paper outlasts empires. That's what my grandmother wrote." She filed the receipt for the ink the next day. The ink that cost her my brother. The ink that cost her 11 hours in the dark. The ink that cost her the use of her left hand for the rest of her life because she cut too deep when she mixed her blood. She set the pen on a small brass plaque. Vethro read the plaque. The letters were engraved. The metal was polished. The words were simple. 117 years. One light, one pen, one sentence. He looked at Rena. What was the sentence? Rena smiled. No warmth, just paper, just ink, just the truth. Paper outlasts empires. Then she filed the receipt. Vethro walked to the window. The human embassy had been empty for 117 years. The furniture was covered in dust. The books had turned to brittle paper. The teacups were dry. The photographs had faded. The faces in the photographs were strangers now, dead strangers, grandparents and great-grandparents who had never seen this day. But the light was still burning, a single bulb, old technology, pre-first contact. It should have burned out centuries ago. It should have flickered and died. It should have been replaced by something more efficient. It had not been replaced. It had been maintained. For 117 years, someone had changed the bulb. Someone had checked the wiring. Someone had made sure the light stayed on. Rena's hand touched the switch. The light flickered, then went dark. She did not turn it back on. The light was not for us, she said. It was for them, so they would know we were coming back, so they would know we had not forgotten, so they would know that someone was still watching. She picked up the pen. The brass was cool now. The warmth was gone. She had held it for 117 years. Her grandmother had held it for 34 years. Her mother had held it for 42 years. Rena had held it for 41 years. Now she set it down, beside the plaque. The ink has been enough, she said. It was always enough. It did not need to be warm. It did not need to be held. It just needed to be written. Vethro left the embassy. He walked through the empty halls, past the dusty furniture, past the brittle books, past the dry teacups, past the faded photographs, past the faces of dead strangers who had kept a light burning for 117 years. He stepped outside. The city of Kethros was quiet. The Keth were in their homes. The client species were in the streets. The Hesh were standing straight. Vethro watched them walk. They did not crouch. They did not bow. They did not tremble. Their spines were still curved. 3 centuries of forced posture could not be undone in 3 months, but they were trying. They were standing as straight as they could. They walked like a species that had finally remembered how to stand, like a species that was learning to be tall. Korethvel was in his quarters. He had not removed the collar. He could not. The law required it. The law required many things. The law required him to wear 12 kilograms of conquered systems around his neck. The law required him to attend every council session. The law required him to vote when called upon. The law required him to sit in a seat that was now level with everyone else's. He had made the law, he had written it, he had signed it, he had filed it. He had never felt the weight before. He picked up a document, page 47. He had read it now. He had read it 47 times. Each time the words meant something different. Each time he found a new clause he had forgotten he wrote. Each time he found a new way the law could be used against him. Section 12, subsection 3. Any species may petition for emergency dissolution. He had written that subsection. He had added it to the treaty. He had thought it was harmless, a formality, something to make the client species feel like they had rights, something to file and forget. He had never thought anyone would use it. He had never thought anyone would keep the receipts. He put the document down. The collar clicked against the desk. The 1,247 conquered systems pulled at his neck. He did not sleep that night. He did not sleep the next night. He did not sleep for 47 nights. He just sat in the dark, wearing his collar, reading page 47, waiting for something that would never come. The Keth were not the center anymore. They were just another species, just another delegation, just another set of seats in a room full of seats. Rena was on the observation deck of the UNSS Unbroken Vow. The ship was leaving Kethros. Behind her, the Conciliation Forum was shrinking. The spire was still there. The obsidian walls were still there. The 1,200-meter ceiling was still lost in darkness. But the podiums were gone. The elevated seats were gone. The height differences were gone. Ahead of her, Earth was growing. A blue dot. A small world. A species that had waited 117 years to file a receipt. She held the pen. The brass was cool. It had been warm for 117 years. Now it was cool. The warmth had done its work. The ink had been enough. The waiting was over. She thought about her grandmother, Ilara Cashin, floating in the dark. 11 hours, alone with the bodies, mixing ink from her own blood, writing a single sentence on a piece of salvage. She thought about her brother, Marcus Cashin, 19 years old, drawing maps of places no one had ever seen, places he would never see, places that would never have his name on them. She thought about the light in the embassy window, burning for 117 years, waiting for someone to ask why. No one had asked. No one had noticed. No one had read page 47. until she made them read it. Vethro listened to the recording. His data slate was cracked, the screen was broken, the audio was still there, the file was still intact. The Keth had tried to delete it. They had failed. The Hesh had made copies. The Velkai had hidden them. The Morath had stored them in their mycelial networks. He listened to the click of the pen cap. He listened to the Hesh standing straight. He listened to the million voices of the Morath. He listened to the child who had kept her father's death certificate. He listened to Rena Cashin say, "Paper outlasts empires." Then he filed the recording. He was an archivist, that was his job. He kept the receipts. He organized them, he indexed them, he made sure they could be found. He would keep this one forever. He would mark it as important. He would write a note. This is the sound of an empire learning to read. 1 year later, the Conciliation Forum held its first session without Keth oversight. 14 client species sat at level seats. 9 human delegates sat among them. The Keth delegates sat at the back. Their seats were level. Their collars were heavy. Their markers clicked when they moved. No one looked at them. Rena Cashin was not there. She had retired. She was on Earth. She was feeding ducks in a pond in St. James's Park. The pond was small. The ducks were fat. The bread was stale. She did not care. She was not thinking about the Keth. She was not thinking about page 47. She was not thinking about the pen. She was thinking about her brother, about the maps he never drew, about the places he never saw. She threw a piece of bread to a duck. The duck ate it. Another duck wanted more. She threw another piece. "Paper outlasts empires," she said to the ducks. The ducks did not care. They wanted more bread. The pen was in a museum. The plaque read, 117 years, 1 light, 1 pen, 1 sentence. No one knew what the sentence was. The museum had asked, the council had asked, the client species had asked, the Hesh had asked, the Velkai had asked, the Morath had asked. Rena had refused to tell them. "The sentence does not matter," she said. "The filing does, the waiting does, the patience does. The sentence was just words, the filing was the weapon." The Hesh accountant, Seshet, was elected to the council. She was the first Hesh to hold office in 311 years. She did not tremble. She did not crouch. She did not bow. Her spine was still curved. 3 centuries of forced posture could not be undone in 1 year. But she was learning. She was practicing. She was standing as straight as she could. She carried a data crystal. It contained every receipt her species had saved, every contract, every death certificate, every birth certificate, every marriage license converted to ownership papers, every page of every document the Keth had ever filed. She had not reviewed all of them. There were too many. There were 47,000 pages. She had read 12,000. She would read the rest. It would take years, decades, maybe the rest of her life. That was the point. Paper outlasts empires, but it also outlasts the people who file it. The work is never finished. There is always another receipt, always another page, always another 117 years of patience. Seshet sat down. Her seat was level, her back was straight, her crystal was in her hand. She looked at the empty seat where Korath Vel used to sit. The Keth still attended sessions. They still wore their collars. They still had 1,247 conquered systems engraved on their necks. They still clicked when they moved. But no one looked at them anymore. No one asked for their vote. No one cared if they spoke. No one recorded their testimony. No one filed their reports. They were spectators, ghosts, paperweights, furniture in a room that had once been theirs. That was the thing about systemic irrelevance. It did not kill you. It did not exile you. It did not execute you. It just made you forgettable. Somewhere in the archives of the Conciliation Forum, page 47 of the Treaty of Kethros was still there. It was in a filing cabinet. The cabinet was in a storage room. The storage room was in the basement. The basement was dark. The cabinet was dusty. The page was yellowed. No one had read it since that day. They did not need to. They remembered the click of the cap. They remembered the Hesh standing straight. They remembered the million voices of the Morath. They remembered the child with her father's death certificate. They remembered the human who had waited 117 years to uncap a pen. They remembered that paper outlasts empires. And empires forget to read. The pen sat in its display case. The brass was cool, the ink was dry, the cap was closed, the work was finished. The waiting was over. The museum was quiet. The lights were low, the plaque was small, the words were simple. 117 years, one light, one pen, one sentence. A child walked past the display case. She was 4 inches tall, she was Morath. Her mycelial network was still growing. She stopped. She looked at the pen. She read the plaque. She did not know what the sentence was. She did not know who wrote it. She did not know why it mattered. But she remembered the click. She would remember it forever. Paper outlasts empires, but memory outlasts paper, and patience outlasts memory. The ink had been enough. It was always enough.